played Dota 2 for thousands of hours, but you've always wanted something more. A reason to fight, a deeper meaning to your battles. But to know the hidden history of Dota 2, you must go on an adventure of a lifetime. An adventure into the lore!
There have only been a few updates in Dota 2's history that have focused on the lore. When they uploaded the old training program where you receive pages of the Archronicus for completing them, and, well, pretty much that's it. Until now, with the release of Siltbreaker. Siltbreaker is the realization of a dream of lore enthusiasts, opening up the Dota 2 world from a simple, unchanging map to an entire universe for us to explore. A living, breathing world with new people, towns, places, and terrors. To be able to see this world that has once only existed in theory and weapon-flavored techs come to life is a dream come true, and one that we will hopefully be able to see again in the near future. But while Siltbreaker is exciting and breaking down every single piece of lore is going to be a exhilarating experience for me, that we can't get started just yet. There's just far too much background information for us to discuss and know before we get into the new revelations the game mode presents us. In order to understand the new campaign, we must understand the characters and the lore behind them, the Slithereen. So come with me now on a journey beneath the waves, where the Radiant and Dyer's reach are lessened and the gods of the surface hold no power. Let's dive headfirst into the world under the sea. The Slithereen are humanoid creatures that live underwater, but appear to be able to travel freely between the surface and the waves. They don't appear to be amphibian, who require air to actually breathe, but can live in the deepest depths of the ocean without ever needing to surface. These humanoid creatures that live under the sea are called Maranths, which is a blanket term for all of the creatures, much like the term human for us. But unlike humans, different races of Maranth seem to have huge biological differences and physical appearances. First, we have the mare, which we have never officially seen before and who's only ever really been mentioned in Sven's lore, whose mother is actually a mare. Headcanon alert, but this actually explains Sven's entire life as a rogue knight. His father fell in love with a mare, a fish-woman hybrid who bore him a child. His father's order considered the relationship a abomination and executed him, and the mother's people shunned her as well, forcing Sven to take care of her alone in her dying days. Perhaps their relationship and Sven's birth was one of the reasons she was dying in the first place, because her kind wouldn't allow her to go back home. This prompted Sven to infiltrate his father's order and kill them all in a righteous fury after years of biding his time. So what does this tell us about the mare? Well, for one, they must be very human-like for, babies to be made between a human and a mare. This has to be so, or a human-Maranth hybrid like Sven wouldn't be able to live for years among other humans without being discovered as a quote-unquote abomination. Our first time actually seeing a mare might be in the Siltbreaker comic with Disciple Kai and the Conclave. As you can see, Kai is very human-like despite being a Maranth with 2 feet, 5 fingers, and really the only big giveaway of his fishy features is his head. Perhaps that's why Sven dons the Shattered Helm, and perhaps this is also why he has so many assorted helms, to mask his Maranth ancestry in the period where he infiltrated the Vigil Knights. But with that headcanon over, there you go. The mare, like Sven and Kai, are our first race of Maranth. Next up, we got the Leviathans. On our sliding scale from human to fish, the Leviathans are one step more than fish than the mare. Still humanish looking with their typical bipedal 2 legs and hands, but clearly fish-like in their heads and size, the Leviathans are creatures that live in the shallow waters rather than the deep ocean. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think about it, because the general rule of aquatic life is that the deeper you go, the bigger the creatures get, but perhaps the reason they live in the shallow waters is not because it was preferred, but because they were forced to. But we'll get into that later. Suffice it to say, the Leviathans live up to their name of being big, huge, hungry creatures, as displayed by the only Leviathan that we actually know of in the game, Tiber. Now we move on to the Slithereen, and this is where things get a bit complicated. Alright, so the Slithereen are the furthest that we get to the fishy side of our scale without going to full fish. They have prominent aquatic features for most of their bodies, like their long tail, prominent gills and frills, and overall fishy features. Yet they still have human arms and human-like facial features where it matters. Yet this is not necessarily needed, as you can still have 2 feet and 2 arms and technically be a Slithereen, as Slark's Dark Pack lore states that Slithereen can regrow appendages, implying that Slark himself is a Slithereen, or at least half of one. So, Slithereen, obviously not human and have a prominent fishy features such as tails instead of legs, big or fishy eyes, and even octopus-like tentacles as we saw in the Siltbreaker comic. But it goes deeper, literally deeper, into the ocean. Slithereen can further be split into a faction called the Deep Ones, who guard sunken cities and treasures the Slithereen hold dear. I like to think of the Deep Ones as the royal guard of the Slithereen. They're top honor guards that protect their most sacred things. But unlike human honor guards that are more tourist attractions and spend their time trying not to smile at tourists, Deep Ones smack shit down with conch maces and angry attitudes. But who guards the guards? Well, that would be, believe it or not, the Slithereen Guard. Naga Siren led a battalion of the Slithereen Guard, who are the royal army of the Slithereen and who are the main fighting force of the Slithereen. Unlike the Deep Ones who actually guard the treasures, the Slithereen Guard are the army that fights battles so that no one can actually get there. Confusing that the guards are not actually the guards but the army? Yeah, well, tell me about it. So, now that the classification system of the Maranths has thoroughly been explained, we can get to the actual lore. And it all revolves around one tiny item, the Gem of True Sight. During the last lore update all those years ago, we got our lore Bible, the Archronicus. And in it, we read a wonderful poem about the Gem of True Sight. Let's get into it one line at a time. Here we go.
Beyond the reach of Southward's End, where summer's warmth dares not to roam, songs tell of ancient treasures lost, worth more than titles, lands, and home.
Alright, so in the corners of the world, in a very cold region, there are old legends of treasure. Interestingly enough, after defeating Siltbreaker's final boss, we can actually see a winter setting. Are we going to be heading towards Southward's End? Maybe. Stay tuned.
At night skies streak in the ribbon's glow, chill ocean's maze of jagged frost, wild winds betray the best of men, where boldest captains fear to cross. Within 'tis said a hidden coast, unknown to neither map or man.
Pretty much the same stuff. In these hard-to-navigate Arctic seas below the Aurora Borealis, there is a hidden coast where no man has been. Reading on.
Where once there died a seaborn fiend, washed up along its sandy span. Inside this corpse the legends claim, a gem lay hid away from sight. And who dares hold this stone unique, shall see all hidden forms of fright.
Okay, so this hidden beach had a huge creature that died there, and a gem was hidden inside of his body. Neat. Okay, there's a lot coming up, so let's just listen for a bit.
From whence the single frigate sailed, no soul still lives to dare recall. Brave voyage launched into the cold, afraid of neither gale nor squall. To southern ice and wind they forged, the dauntless crew did plot their trek. In times the fields of Flow and Berg gave glimpse of land to all on deck. Upon an Arctic shore they spied frost-touched remains of monster vast. Old marks from briny wars they saw, and ice locked teeth to dwarf their mast. On darkened beach was set a host to excavate this mortal coil. Their picks and tools they lifted high, then dug into their grisly toil. For days and days they hacked and crawled, as stained was beach in ancient gore. Through rib and tissue deep and delved, and wrought their path to monster's core. From humid depths came glowing dim, strange spectral light of emerald hue. Great gem matched size with Finder's fist. Worn crew rejoiced, old songs proved true.
The crew dug into the ancient monster's corpse until they found a glowing gem inside. Interestingly, they had to lift their tools high to get to the top of the creature, so they must have climbed on top of him and burrowed their way down. That creature must have been gigantic.
Return to deck with treasure held, as one all crew did choke their breath, for ring they were by wraiths of yore. Ghost ships long sunk and those past death, for hidden from the common eye, are ones who drift when lifeblood fails. Bright gem grants truth to sight they learned, then set with fright to raising sails. Yet ghastly shades no harm intend, but warning men whose air's still drawn, to bring sight stone on waters wide, would raise the wrath of deep Melron.
So the crew finds the gem and goes back to their ship, and lo and behold, they can see every ship that has ever died in that area, complete with ghostly crews who are ringing their bells. But not to scare them, to warn them that moving the gem from shallow water to the deep ocean would awaken Melron, who we will explore later. For now, back to the poem.
A day and 12 on ocean waves, past laden anxious crews retreat, when came long shadows in their wake, Lord Melron's servant come to eat.
Melron sent a monster to reclaim the gem after 13 days at sea.
By haste and lucky breeze they sped, for dawns the scourge kept far at bay, until a wisp of earth drew far, when fickle fortune's winds betrayed. As beasts drew under ship to strike, rowboats were filled with man and loot. Then loosed were heavy chain and weight, to crash ship's anchor on sea's brute.
The monster caught up to the ship and went under it, but the crew abandoned ship and dropped an anchor on top of its head.
Then deck leaned port as sea beast scaled, while tendril fury came aboard. In frenzied panic 3 boats fled, with ship entangled, kraken roared. Through tree-thick feelers twist and squeeze, wood hull made vent to frozen surge, as half ship sank, death masters cold. The gem still moved and neared shore's verge. In rushed pursuit the kraken swam, to overtake the first boat of 3. When drowned men froze and wreckage sank, did Hunter learn its charge stayed free.
The beast sees 3 boats escaping and kills the first boat.
As second crew in horror rode, slick grasping fingers closed around. Yet once again gem was not there, and third boat's band set foot ground. So terrified of Melron's rage, did thrashing scourge set out anew, then breached itself upon the surf. As kraken flailed, its foe withdrew.
The beast kills the second crew and chases for the third, but they make it to shore. The creature chases them to shore, but was much slower and could not catch up to the sailor.
Of fated crew's last port and call, no gray account still deigns to say. Some firm believe they may toward home, though others tell of hangman's sway, of gem and title, deep god's hunt. Vain quest goes on without reward, its servants blindly come to shore. To kill and raise, be put to sword, for no thrall creature of the depths, no spirit bound in drowning's keep, nor Melron the tentacular shall rest till seas gem comes to sleep.
So the men make it to shore, but no one knows of their fate at the end. All that is known is that Melron will never rest until the gem is returned to the ocean. Alright, so much lore to go through, so many revelations. Let's get that headcanon going. So who's who in this story? Surprisingly, This is the inciting incident between Tidehunter and Kunkka, and explains why they hate each other so much. Don't believe me? Well, let's take another look. Tidehunter is a Leviathan, a huge rogue Leviathan who worships Maelron the Tentacular, the same Maelron who sent this, quote, hunter to go eat the sailors. Now, if calling the beast that he sent the hunter and commenting about his desire to eat things isn't a big enough hint that it's Tidehunter, there are more hints. The creature is referred to as a kraken, so we here on Earth assume that it was a giant octopus, as the story also talks about its tentacles ravaging the ship. But in the Dota 2 world of Brew, krakens might be something else. After all, Tidehunter's back is called the Kraken Shell, and its description reads that Kladdish Navymen, Kunkka's people, tell tales of a beast that could not be pierced as it attacked them. Let's not forget Tide's ultimate, which summons tentacles to ravage people in the waters. So it's pretty clear that Tidehunter is a Leviathan, but to humans, they refer to him as a Kraken, the beast of the sea, and the hunter of Maelron. But how do we know it was Kunkka? Well, the crew lost their ship but dropped their anchor on top of the creature, and Tidehunter carries the anchor of Kunkka's flagship. Furthermore, Kunkka has the ability to summon a ghost ship, the same type of ghost ships that he witnessed after claiming the Gem of True Sight, a ship that even rings its bells and has ghostly wails, just like in the poem. Perhaps exposure to the gem for so long gave Kunkka power over its effects, and it became part of him. But in the end, there are too many coincidences for it not to be true. This is the incident that made Tidehunter hate Kunkka, chase him to the ends of the earth, and finally catch up to him in the battle between the Kladdish Navy and the demon fleet of the Cataract, where Kunkka supposedly died to Tidehunter, who summoned Maelron to destroy and ravage his entire fleet. So there you go, one of the biggest mysteries in Dota 2 is finally solved. The theft of the Gem of True Sight by Kunkka is why Tidehunter hates him so much, for Tidehunter cannot return home and please his god until the gem is returned to the deep. But these two may not have been the only ones affected by the Gem of True Sight. So much already revealed, but there is so much more to talk about. We haven't even gotten into the revelations of Siltbreaker yet, but this is all way too much for one video. Anyway, thank you for watching Loregasm. Special shout out for part 1 to Mary Mind, who is making some of that custom artwork, and you'll get your normal shout outs at the end.